Hello, welcome to the Daily News Ukraine channel. Today is February 26th and our daily review of news about Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky expressed his belief that peace can be restored by returning Crimea because it is Ukrainian land and people. 9 years ago, Russian aggression began in Crimea. By returning Crimea, we will restore peace. This is our land, our people, our history. We will return the Ukrainian flag to every corner of Ukraine, Zelensky posted on Telegram. As reported, today Ukraine marks the day of resistance to Russia's occupation of Crimea. Read also, Lubinets, Russia illegally holds 180 political prisoners, most of them Crimean Tatars. 9 years ago, Russian sabotage groups began attempts to seize Crimea. On February 26, 2014, at the call of the Mejlis of the Crimean Tatar people, thousands of Crimean Tatars, Ukrainians, and representatives of other nationalities rallied near the Verkhovna Rada of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea to resist the Russian occupation and declare Ukraine's integrity. The next day, regular military formations of the Russian Federation entered the government buildings of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. The Russian army launched 34 strikes on 15 settlements in Donetsk region over the past day. Avdiivka, Kharkiv, Bakhmut, Kostiantynivka, Chasiv Yar, Krasnohorivka, Drushkivka, Kramatorsk, Velika Novosilka, Okarotine, Karlivka, Sievern, Lastikine, Tonensk, Krasnohorivka came under enemy fire, the press service of the National Police Main Department in Donetsk region informs. The Russian army used aviation, missile systems, Grad MLRS, artillery, tanks. A total of 23 civilian objects, 18 houses, administrative buildings, a town council, a school, an outpatient clinic, were destroyed and damaged. Avdiivka suffered 9 attacks. The enemy shelled the town with aircraft, Grad MLRS, and artillery. The infrastructure was damaged, a local resident was injured. Read also, enemy hits Avdiivka with artillery, tanks, Grad MLRS, launches airstrike. The Russians attacked Kramatorsk from the aircraft, hitting 11 private houses and an outpatient clinic, and injuring 1 person. As a result of artillery shelling, civilian casualties were reported in Bakhmut. The National Police and the Security Service of Ukraine opened investigations under Art. 438, violation of the laws and customs of war, of the Criminal Code of Ukraine. Read also, 3 killed, 4 injured in Russia's shelling of Donetsk region. The police helped evacuate another 82 people over the past day. Since the beginning of the mandatory evacuation, local police have helped evacuate more than 44,810 residents, including 6,165 children and 2,265 people with disabilities. After the occupation of Sievierodonetsk, the Russian invaders constantly announced the town's restoration, but it was not prepared for winter and now remains without a heating supply. Now the occupying power promises to restore Sievierodonetsk by 2025. This week, the regional occupation authorities announced another promise, to restore all the houses in the town by 2025, the Luhansk Regional Military Administration posted on Telegram. At the same time, Sievierodonetsk residents started receiving utility bills regardless of whether a person lives in the town or not. On the eve of winter, the occupation authorities promised not to charge for gas and electricity, where they are supplied, due to the lack of heating. However, in February, people received bills with the indicated amount of consumption. The time has come to pay the bills, the administration added. As reported, the invaders cannot even launch an educational process in the temporarily captured Sievierodonetsk. Not a single school worked for a day, even during the period when both the security situation and weather conditions were favorable. U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine Brink addressed Ukrainians on the Day of Resistance to Russia's occupation of Crimea and pledged U.S. support in the struggle for the liberation of the peninsula. The U.S. Embassy in Ukraine published Brink's video address on Twitter. On February 26, 2014, thousands of Crimean Tatars and other Ukrainians gathered to declare, "We are Ukrainian. Crimea is Ukraine." As you continue to fight for your sovereignty and democracy, the U.S. will work with you to create a future that affords everyone freedom, dignity, and justice, the ambassador said. As noted, the U.S. condemns Russia's despicable attempt to change Crimea's demographics, including through appalling human filtration operations to forcibly deport and disappear Ukrainian civilians. We call on Russia to immediately release all Ukrainian citizens unjustly imprisoned, and we join you in declaring once again, Crimea is Ukraine, Brink emphasized. Read also, Lubinets, Russia illegally holds 180 political prisoners, most of them Crimean Tatars. As reported, today Ukraine marks the day of resistance to Russia's occupation of Crimea. 9 years ago, Russian sabotage groups began attempts to seize Crimea. On February 26, 2014, at the call of the Mejlis of the Crimean Tatar people, thousands of Crimean Tatars, Ukrainians, and representatives of other nationalities rallied near the Verkhovna Rada of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea to resist the Russian occupation and declare Ukraine's integrity. The next day, regular military formations of the Russian Federation entered the government buildings of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. The resistance to the Russian occupation of Crimea has been ongoing for 9 years, since February 26, 2014. So far, 180 people have become Kremlin's political prisoners, most of whom are Crimean Tatars. February 26 became, for all of us, a symbol of resistance to the Russian occupation, which has been going on for 9 years. It was on this day in 2014 that a mass rally in support of the territorial integrity of Ukraine, organized by the Mejlis of the Crimean Tatar people, took place near the Crimean parliament in Simferopol. Ukrainian Parliament Commissioner for Human Rights Dmytro Lubinets posted on Telegram on the day of resistance to the occupation of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea and city of Sevastopol. Due to the constant fear of Ukrainian resistance, Russia does not stop harsh repression and persecution of Ukrainian citizens in the temporarily occupied Crimea, illegal searches, trumped-up criminal cases, fabricated sentences, in particular against representatives of the indigenous people of the peninsula, the Crimean Tatars, the ombudsman said. Read also, Ukraine marks Day of Resistance to Russia's occupation of Crimea. Currently, the Russian Federation illegally holds 180 political prisoners, 116 of them are Crimean Tatars. The recent death of 2 tortured political prisoners, Konstantin Shiring and Zemel Hafarov, in the Kremlin's cells, was Russia's flagrant violation of fundamental human rights and norms of international law. They were not provided with the necessary medical care, Lubinets emphasized. Read also, conscripts brought from Russia to set up fortifications in Crimea, but even paying such a high price for the right to live in a free, independent, and sovereign state will not stop the Ukrainian people, the ombudsman believes. Standing together, we resist Russian armed aggression and defend our homeland, he stressed. On Sunday morning, the troops of the Russian Federation shelled the border areas of Sumy region with mortars. From 8:50 to 9:05, information was received about 6 strikes, probably launched from a 120 mm mortar, in the area of Kharkiv settlement, the Operational Command North posted on Telegram. No military personnel or civilian casualties, as well as damages to military equipment or civilian infrastructure, were reported. Over the past day, the Russian army shelled 8 regions of Ukraine. The consumption of electricity across Ukraine has reduced compared to Saturday, and there is currently no capacity deficit in the energy system. The relevant statement was made by Ukrenergo National Power Company on Facebook, and Ukrinform correspondent reports. According to Ukrenergo, all types of power generating plants are running at the moment. Electricity imports are carried out in small volumes. Additionally, power engineers managed to reduce electricity consumption limits in the city of Odessa and the Odessa district. However, scheduled power outages are remaining in effect there. Repair and restoration works are underway across all Ukrenergo's facilities that had been damaged due to Russian attacks. In the Luhansk region, Russian infantry troops are storming the positions of Ukrainian forces near such settlements as Kreminna and Bilohorivka. The relevant statement was made by Luhansk Regional Military Administration head Serhiy Haidai on Telegram, and Ukrinform correspondent reports. Near Kreminna and Bilohorivka, Russians are storming our positions. In particular, yesterday the enemy infantry tried to do so, because the enemy's tank offensive was repelled a few days ago, and the equipment was burnt down, Haidai told. In his words, the forest area around Kreminna makes Russian invaders to use different tactics. In the Svatov district, the situation is remaining stable, Haidai added. On February 25, 2023, Russian troops shelled the border areas of the Kharkiv region's Chawiv, Kupiansk and Kharkiv districts. The relevant statement was made by Kharkiv Regional Military Administration head Ola Sinihubov on Telegram, and Ukrinform correspondent reports. At least 4 detached houses were damaged in Russia's shelling of Kupiansk. Household buildings were destroyed. A woman, 82, suffered from stress and was provided with medical aid. In the urban-type settlement of Kupiansk-Vazlovyi, Russian projectiles caused damage to 5-story apartment blocks. Around 8 p.m., February 25, 2023, Russian troops launched artillery strikes on the Kupiansk district's village of Monokhanivka. No casualties were reported. Demining efforts are underway in the Kharkiv region. Over the past day, the Ukrainian State Emergency Service has neutralized 46 dangerous objects. President of the Czech Republic Petr Pavel believes Ukraine's membership in NATO should be considered immediately after the war with Russia ends. The relevant statement was made by President of the Czech Republic Petr Pavel in an interview with Suspiln, and Ukrinform correspondent reports. According to Pavel, Ukraine has completed its homework in terms of technical compatibility. There is also full compatibility in terms of values and long-term strategic interests. Hence, the only requirement remaining is that there is no ongoing conflict or territorial dispute. From the point of view of international law, as soon as Ukraine becomes a member of NATO, while still in conflict, the alliance will become a party to that conflict. One can only imagine how large-scale the conflict between NATO and Russia will be then, most likely, even with the use of nuclear weapons. So we have to wait for the end of the war and the restoration of Ukraine's sovereignty. And here the question of membership in NATO will arise, Pavel told. Pavel mentioned that, at this stage, he would support Ukraine's membership in NATO, because Ukraine deserves to be viewed as a new NATO member. In his words, the Ukrainian military will obviously be the most experienced of all and will greatly benefit NATO member countries. Today we were talking about those news. President, by returning Crimea, we will restore peace. Russians hit Donetsk region 34 times in past day. Invaders postpone restoration of Sievierodonetsk for 2 years. Brink addresses Ukrainians on Day of Resistance to Russia's occupation of Crimea. Lubinets, Russia illegally holds 180 political prisoners, most of them Crimean Tatars. Enemy shells border areas of Sumy region with mortars. Ukrenergo, electricity consumption reduced compared to Saturday. Russian infantry storming positions of Ukrainian forces near Kreminna, Bilohorivka, Haidai. Kharkiv region's border areas come under enemy fire. President of Czech Republic voices support for Ukraine's accession to NATO after war.